Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we take a deep dive into the stuff you want to learn about. And today, we're going to be diving into the magic of thinking big. And what really caught my eye right off the bat was the dedication. It's dedicated to a boy who wants to be a professor of happiness.
Yeah, right? Like that sets the tone, doesn't it? We're going to be talking about some serious stuff, some real strategies, but it's all coming from this positive, optimistic place. It's not just about, slapping a smile on and pretending everything's great.
Exactly. This book is not about, good vibes only. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's about understanding how our thoughts actually work, how they really do shape our results. So that's our mission in this deep dive, to get to the core of this book, to pull out the strategies you can use to be more successful in all parts of your life. And to be clear, this isn't some kind of airy-fairy self-help stuff. This is about concrete tools.
Right. It's about mechanisms.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the levers and pulleys of your own mind.
Exactly. So let's get into it. And I think a good place to start is with what the book really centers on, this idea of belief.
Yeah, the power of belief. This is foundational. The book kicks off with this amazing story about a sales rep, Harry. And Harry consistently outsold all his peers. Like by a factor of 5.
Wow.
Right? So you'd think, okay, maybe Harry's just, super smart. Or he worked way harder than everyone else. But the author suggests that, no, it was actually Harry's belief in himself, his own potential, that was the real difference maker.
So it wasn't just about skills or effort. It was about
Mindset. It was about believing he could do it.
And the book talks about this environment of little thinking, this idea that we're surrounded by messages that tell us to think small, to accept a kind of limited version of success. Like there's this feeling of, oh, there are too many chiefs, not enough Indians,
Yeah, and the book really pushes back on that, actually. It argues that too many chiefs idea is often just plain wrong. That in reality, in many fields, leaders are saying the opposite. They're like, we've got too many Indians and not nearly enough chiefs.
So there's actually more opportunity
Way more
than we often think.
Absolutely. And it's our own beliefs that are often the biggest roadblock.
The book uses this great analogy of a thermostat. It's like, if you believe you're only worth so much, well, that's probably all you're going to get. Your belief system sets the limit for your achievement.
Right. Like a thermostat sets the temperature for a room. Your belief system sets the temperature for your success.
So how do we change that thermostat setting? How do we raise it?
Well, the book emphasizes that successful people aren't like superhuman or anything. They're ordinary people who've developed this unshakable belief in themselves. It's not about being born with some special talent or having a genius IQ.
It's about
self-belief, cultivating that inner confidence.
I really liked how the book talks about Mr. Triumph and Mr. Defeat, these internal voices we all have.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
And depending on which voice we listen to, it shapes our whole day.
Totally. So if you're telling yourself, today is going to be awesome, I'm going to crush it, well, that's Mr. Triumph talking. And guess what? You're more likely to have a great day, to be more productive, more positive.
And on the flip side, if you're dwelling on what might go wrong...
Well, hello, Mr. Defeat.
Right. And the point is, it's a choice.
Exactly. It's not about ignoring negative thoughts altogether. I mean, that's not realistic. It's about choosing which voice you're going to listen to, which one you're going to let steer you.
And it's not just about feeling good. It's about results.
Oh, absolutely.
The book makes this point that the size of your success is directly related to the size of your belief.
Right. Like, if you set small goals, you'll probably achieve small things. But if you think big, if you set ambitious goals...
then you open up the possibility for
massive success. And here's the thing. Big goals don't necessarily require way more effort than small ones.
That's interesting.
Yeah, sometimes the initial planning, the strategy, it's not that different. But the payoff, the potential, it's exponentially bigger when you think big.
To kind of underline this point, the book quotes Ralph J. Cordner, the chairman of General Electric, and he talks about how crucial it is to focus on personal self-development, but not just because someone told you to, but because you are driven by your own determination. It's like that inner fire, that belief in yourself, that's what fuels real growth.
It's about agency. It's about taking ownership of your own development.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about the power of belief. But what happens when those beliefs start to kind of waver? when doubts creep in.
Well, that's where the book introduces this concept of excusitis. They call it the failure disease.
Ooh, the failure disease.
Yeah.
That sounds serious.
It is. It's basically this mental pattern where we start making excuses for why we're not achieving more.
Oh, I know that one.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
And these excuses can be anything, right? From, oh, I'm not feeling well, to I didn't get the right education, to I'm too old or too young, or I just have bad luck.
Yeah. And it's like, they sound plausible, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But deep down, these excuses are often rooted in fear of failure or lack of self-belief.
And the problem is excusitis, it's like a snowball rolling downhill. The book says it just gets worse if we don't address it.
Absolutely. And it's like we start looking for the good excuses, the ones that are socially acceptable, like, oh, it's my health, or the system is rigged against me.
Right, right. It's never my fault.
Exactly.
And the book really, really challenges this by giving examples of people who achieved incredible things despite having what could have been really good excuses.
Oh, yeah, like Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Yeah.
He didn't let being paralyzed stop him from leading a nation.
Right. Or Harry Truman becoming president without a college degree.
Or John F. Kennedy overcoming the too young argument. Or Lyndon B. Johnson and Dwight D. Eisenhower, both having heart attacks, but not letting that stop them from doing what they felt called to do.
It's like they didn't let these things define them.
Exactly. They chose not to be limited by those potential excuses.
So let's break down some of these specific types of excusitis that the book talks about. One that really jumped out was health excusitis. And the book makes this really interesting point that, perfect health is actually pretty rare, especially as we get older.
Right. Most adults have some kind of ache or pain or something going on.
Exactly. But the book says that people who are really successful, they don't let minor health issues become this big reason to quit or not pursue their goals.
They want to use it as a crutch.
And there's this story in the book about a man in Cleveland who thought he had a heart problem. And he was using this as a reason for why he couldn't do certain things, but he hadn't even been diagnosed with anything.
Oh, wow. It was all in his head.
Yeah, it was this self-imposed limitation. And the book contrasts that with, someone who might actually have a health issue. But they go to the doctor, they get the right treatment, and then they focus on what they can do, not what they can't.
Right. It's about focusing on your abilities, not your limitations.
And there's another story about this guy who was convinced he had a diseased gallbladder, even though, multiple doctors told him he was fine.
Oh, wow. So he was totally healthy.
Yeah. But in his mind, he was sick. It shows how powerful our beliefs about our health can be, even when they don't match reality. And the advice here is simple, but important. Be grateful for the health you have.
It's so easy to take our health for granted.
Totally. Okay, so another type of excusitis the book talks about is intelligence excusitis.
Ah, yes. The I'm not smart enough excuse.
Yeah, and the book argues that it's not really about how smart you are, but how well you manage and use your intelligence.
Exactly. It's about strategy. It's about application. It's not just about raw brain power.
And they give this great example of Phil. Phil wasn't necessarily the smartest guy on paper, but he was super enthusiastic, he loved people, and he was really good at connecting with them. And that made him incredibly valuable to his company.
Right. It's those soft skills, that emotional intelligence, that can often make a bigger difference than just pure intellect.
And the book brings in Henry Ford's perspective on this. Henry Ford famously said that he didn't need to know everything. He just needed to know how to find the people who did.
Oh, that's so smart.
Right. It's like it's more important to know how to access information and leverage the knowledge of others than to try to have all the answers yourself.
It's about resourcefulness. It's about building a network of experts.
Exactly. And the book contrasts this with the fact man on a quiz show who can rattle off all these obscure details but might not actually be able to solve real-world problems.
Right. It's the difference between theoretical knowledge and practical application.
Totally. Okay, another excusitis we've all probably encountered is age excusitis.
Oh, yeah. The I'm too old or I'm too young excuse.
And the book has some great stories about people who proved this wrong, like the guy who became a minister at 45, starting a whole new career, or Bill, who got his economics degree at 55.
That's amazing.
It's never too late.
Right. Never too late. And the book really emphasizes that this idea of old age as a barrier It's just another form of failure disease, and it can
Mm-hmm.
be overcome by staying positive and focused on the future.
Yeah, it's about mindset. And the book gives some really helpful advice on how to combat age-related excuses. Like, don't be so focused on your age. Focus on what you're capable of doing now.
Right, and don't fall into the trap of using your age as a crutch or an excuse.
And it talks about how, as we get older, we might have certain privileges or advantages that come with age, but don't use those as a reason to stop growing or learning.
Right, it's about staying hungry, staying curious, no matter what your age is.
Totally. Okay, and finally we have luck excusitis.
Ah, the blame game.
It's like when we blame our own failures on bad luck, but when other people succeed, we say, "Oh, they were just lucky."
Yeah, it's easy to dismiss other people's success as just being lucky.
And the book tells the story about George C., who got a big promotion at work, and one of his colleagues who hadn't been as successful was saying, "Oh, George was just lucky." But the reality was that George had been working incredibly hard, putting in extra hours, really going above and beyond.
Right, and that hard work, that dedication, that's often what looks like luck from the outside.
Exactly. What we perceive as luck is often the result of consistent effort, preparation, and being ready to seize opportunities.
It's about creating your own luck.
Totally. Okay, so we've talked about belief and excusitis. Now let's dive into a big one, fear.
Ooh, yeah, fear, that's a real beast.
The book acknowledges that fear is very real and can be a huge obstacle to success, but it also pushes back on this idea that, it's all in your head and that we can just think our way out of fear.
Right, it's not as simple as just like positive affirmations.
Yeah. Exactly. And the book argues that the real antidote to fear is action.
Action, doing the thing you're afraid of.
And there's this crazy example from Navy training, like to get recruits over their fear of jumping off a high diving board, the instructors would sometimes accidentally push them off.
Whoa, that's intense.
Right, but the point is it forced them to face their fear head on. And often that's what it takes to break the grip of fear.
It's like once you do the thing you're afraid of, you realize it's not as bad as you thought it would be.
And the book also talks about our memory bank and the teller who retrieves our thoughts. And the idea is that we need to be consciously depositing positive, encouraging thoughts into our memory bank because when we face a challenge, the teller is going to give us whatever kind of thoughts we've been storing.
Right. So if you're constantly feeding your mind with negativity and doubt, well, that's what's going to come out when you need it most.
But if you're feeding your mind with positive thoughts, with self-belief, with courage,
Then those are the thoughts that will be there to support you.
and there's this interesting contrast between how successful people and people who struggle with success process negative experiences. Like people who struggle tend to dwell on negative things. They replay them over and over in their minds.
Yeah, they get stuck in that loop.
But successful people, they acknowledge the negative experience, but then they move on. They don't let it define them.
It's like they don't dwell on the past.
Yeah.
They're focused on the present and the future.
And the book has this really cool analogy about a painting of a sunrise. Or maybe it's a sunset. It's kind of ambiguous.
Yeah.
And the point is that how you interpret the painting, whether you see it as a hopeful sunrise or a sad sunset, it reflects your own internal state.
It's a metaphor for how our perception is shaped by our mindset.
Exactly. And the book explains that just like we need to consciously choose to deposit positive memories, we also need to actively choose to recall those positive memories.
Right. It's like we have to train our minds to focus on the good, the positive, the hopeful.
Because dwelling on negative thoughts, it's like we're creating these mental monsters that can hold us back.
And those monsters can be really tough to fight.
Totally. So let's talk about some practical ways to build confidence.
Okay, good. Because I need some of that.
The book has some great advice on this, and one of the things it emphasizes is that confidence often comes from acting confident. Like, even if you don't feel confident on the inside, you can start by acting confident on the outside.
Fake it till you make it.
In a way, yeah. Like, the book tells this story about a guy named G who was applying for a job, and he impressed the interviewer not just because he was respectful, but because he also demonstrated self-respect. Like, he asked good questions, he presented himself as an equal, not someone...
Right. It's about seeing the human behind the facade.
And there's this great story about a hotel clerk who had to deal with a really abusive customer. But the clerk stayed calm, not because he was okay with being treated that way, but because he understood that the customer's anger wasn't really about him, it's about something else.
Well, it's like not taking things personally.
Exactly. And there's another story about a professor, Paul W., who had cheated on an assignment. But the other professor, instead of punishing him harshly, was really understanding and focused on helping Paul learn from his mistake.
It's about leading with empathy, not just judgment.
And the book emphasizes the connection between our actions and our conscience. Like if we do things that go against our own sense of right and wrong, it creates guilt, and that erodes our confidence.
Right. It's about living in alignment with our values.
And I found this concept of managed motions really interesting. The idea is that our physical actions can actually change our emotions.
Well, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Like if you're feeling down, just stand up straight and smile.
Exactly. And the book gives the specific example of overcoming shyness during introductions, like consciously making yourself give a firm handshake, make eye contact, and offer a positive greeting. These physical actions can actually help you feel more confident.
It's like tricking your brain into feeling confident.
In a way, yeah. And this also applies to our overall posture and how we move, like slouching and walking slowly. It can actually reinforce negative feelings and low self-esteem, but standing up straight, walking with purpose, it can actually improve our attitude and boost our confidence.
So it's like our body language can influence our mental state.
Exactly. And for people who struggle with speaking up in groups, the book encourages just that speak up. Even if it feels uncomfortable at first, it's a way to overcome that fear and realize that your voice matters.
It's about pushing yourself outside your comfort zone.
And last but not least, the book talks about the power of smiling.
Oh, yeah, the universal language of kindness.
And it's not just about being polite. Like, smiling can actually change our mood and make us feel more positive. And it can also have a huge impact on how others perceive us and interact with us.
Like a genuine smile can disarm even the most difficult person.
There's this amazing anecdote in the book about a car accident where a sincere smile completely diffused the situation. It's like smiling is this powerful tool for connection and de-escalation.
It's a superpower.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
And the book summarizes all this into 5 actionable steps for building confidence.
Oh.
Be a front seater, make eye contact, walk 25% faster, practice speaking up, and smile big.
Those are great concrete steps.
Yeah, stuff you can start doing right away.
Mm.
All right, so we've talked about belief, excuses, confidence. Now let's get to the really fun part, thinking big.
Oh, yeah. This is where things get exciting.
And the book makes this point that, it's not just about having a big vocabulary. It's about the impact that the words we use have on our thoughts and on the thoughts of others.
Right. Words have power.
And it talks about how we think in pictures, in mental images, and words are the building blocks of those images.
So the words we choose, they create pictures in our minds.
And different words, even when describing the same thing, can create really different images and different reactions, like saying, "we failed" versus "here's a new approach."
Totally. One evokes defeat, the other evokes possibility.
Right. Or problem versus challenge.
Problem feels heavy, challenge feels exciting.
And big expense versus big investment.
Expense feels like a loss, investment feels like future growth.
And the book says that people who think big, they're really good at consciously creating these positive, optimistic mental images.
They're masters of their internal dialogue.
Exactly. And it gives this list of small thinkers' vocabulary phrases that create negative images and encourages us to get rid of them. Like, it won't work, it's impossible, the competition has an unfair advantage.
Those are classic negativity traps.
And then it gives this other list of phrases that create big positive mind images, like, imagine, we can definitely do better, let's thoroughly explore all the possibilities.
Those are powerful, empowering phrases.
And there's this story about a salesman who's trying to sell an old farm, but instead of just talking about the features of the property, he painted these vivid mental pictures for the buyers. Like, he talked about how it could be a riding stable or a tree farm, all these different possibilities.
So he was selling the vision, not just the property.
Exactly. And there's another example about a retail executive who realized that the average customer spent way more money over their lifetime than on a single purchase. And that changed how he approached customer service. It was like he started thinking bigger about the value of each customer.
It's about seeing the long-term potential, not just the short-term transaction.
And the book talks about the power of visualizing your future self, the person you want to become. Like, if you're feeling discouraged, focus on that future version of yourself, the one who has achieved your goals. It can really help you stay motivated.
It's like keeping your eyes on the prize.
And there's this great story about an accountant named Harry who was hired for a pretty basic role, but But he always had this big thinking attitude. He saw the potential. He was always looking for ways to contribute more. And eventually, he became president of the company.
Wow. That's proof that thinking big can really pay off.
And the book also warns against getting bogged down in small thinking about unimportant things, like the size of your office or the order of things on a list. It's like when you think big, those little things just don't matter as much.
Right. It's about focusing on what's truly important, what moves the needle.
And there's this inspiring story about a salesman who had a stutter, but but instead of letting that define him, he focused on his strengths, on the value he brought to his clients. He thought big, and he didn't let his perceived limitations hold him back.
It's about owning your strengths and not letting your weaknesses define you.
And the book kind of summarizes what it means to be a think big person. It's about not underestimating your own potential, using positive language, expanding your vision of what's possible, and valuing your current role no matter what it is.
It's a whole mindset shift.
Okay, so we've talked about thinking big in general. Now let's dive into creativity.
Ooh, I love this topic.
And the book emphasizes that a fundamental requirement for creative thinking is belief. Like, you have to believe that a solution is possible.
You have to have faith in the creative process.
Exactly. And the book says we need to eliminate the word impossible from our vocabulary.
Impossible is just a limiting belief.
There's this example in the book about a guy who was convinced he couldn't go back to college because of his age and family responsibilities. But the book challenges that, saying, where there's a will, there's a way.
It's about finding creative solutions, not just accepting limitations.
And the book encourages brainstorming, even seemingly crazy ideas, as a way to overcome what it calls tradition paralysis.
Like getting stuck in the old ways of doing things.
And it gives the example of the DuPont company, which has a long history of innovation, as a model for creative thinking.
They're not afraid to try new things, to
Yeah.
experiment, to push the boundaries.
And the book suggests becoming a student of ideas, like actively seeking out new perspectives, reading different kinds of books, talking to people from different backgrounds.
Expanding your horizons, basically.
Exactly. And it also talks about the importance of experimentation and breaking out of routines,
Trying new things, shaking things up a bit.
like trying a new restaurant, taking a different route to work, reading a book in a genre you've never explored before. These little things can spark new ideas and connections.
It's about keeping your mind fresh and stimulated.
And the book stresses the importance of being progressive, not regressive, like always looking for ways to improve, to innovate, to move forward.
Not just clinging to the old ways of doing things.
And there's this story about a successful store owner who had this Monday night plan for continuous improvement. She would spend every Monday night reflecting on the past week and brainstorming ways to do things better. And she realized that what she learned and applied after starting her business was actually more important than her initial knowledge or skills.
It's about lifelong learning, continuous improvement.
And the book says that capacity is a state of mind. Like, if you believe you can do more, you'll often find ways to do more.
Your mind will rise to the challenge.
And there's this great example about a bank executive who took on extra responsibilities when a colleague left unexpectedly. And that led to him getting a huge promotion. He proved that he had the capacity for more.
He stepped up and showed what he was capable of.
And the book talks about this success combination: do what you do better and do more of what you do.
It's about constantly striving for excellence and expanding your capabilities.
And it encourages us to embrace opportunities to do more, to take on new challenges.
Don't shy away from growth opportunities.
And then there's this really interesting observation about how big people, influential people, they tend to monopolize listening, not talking.
That's counterintuitive.
Right. We often think of leaders as being the ones who are always talking, giving directions. But the book says that the best leaders are the ones who are always listening, seeking out advice, gathering different perspectives.
They're humble. They're open to learning. They value the input of others.
And there's this story about a milk processing executive who is facing a really tough management problem. And instead of trying to solve it on his own, he asked his entire team for help. And they came up with some amazing solutions that he would have never thought of on his own.
Wow. That's the power of collective intelligence.
And this principle applies to businesses too, right? Like, successful businesses invest a lot in consumer research and understanding what their customers want and need. They're listening to the market.
They're not just guessing, they're gathering data.
And the book even has this great sign: To sell John Brown what John Brown buys, you've got to see things through John Brown's eyes.
It's about empathy, about understanding your customer's perspective.
And the book concludes this section by saying that your ears are your intake valves for creative power.
Listening is essential for learning and innovation.
And it outlines this three-stage program for strengthening creativity. Be receptive to new ideas, be an experimental person, and be progressive.
It's about being open, curious, and always looking for ways to improve.
And it emphasizes the importance of capturing and developing your ideas. Like, write them down, review them regularly, refine them on paper.
Don't let your ideas just float away. Capture them and nurture them.
And there's this great contrast between two life insurance salesmen. One was just focused on selling a product, but the other was genuinely focused on understanding his clients' needs and finding the right solutions for them. And guess who was more successful?
The one who listened, of course.
Exactly. And this ties back to something we talked about earlier, the importance of good packaging.
Presentation matters.
Like when you're selling yourself, your appearance, your demeanor, it all communicates something.
It's your personal brand.
And the book says that dressing well, it always pays off. And it's not about being flashy or expensive. It's about quality. Quality over quantity.
It's about presenting yourself with confidence and respect.
And it's not just about how others perceive you. It's about how you perceive yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you dress well, you feel better about yourself. You carry yourself with more confidence.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Okay, let's move on to a really interesting section called You Are What You Think You Are.
Ooh, that sounds deep.
It is. It's about how our self-perception, our internal beliefs, they really do shape our external reality. And there's this classic story about three bricklayers.
I heard this one.
One bricklayer is just laying bricks, another is building a wall, and the third is building a cathedral. Same task, but totally different mindsets.
And those mindsets shape their experience of the work.
Exactly. And the book identifies two groups of people based on their attitudes towards their work. Group A see their jobs as part of their larger career aspirations. They're always looking to improve and grow. Group B see their jobs as just a necessary evil. They focus on the negative aspects.
And I'm guessing Group A is the more successful group.
You guessed it. And the book says that promotions, opportunities, recognition, it all flows towards the Group A thinkers.
Because they have a growth mindset. They're always looking for ways to contribute more.
And the core message here is that believing I am important and my work is important, it's a direct path to greater success.
It's about self-worth, about recognizing your own value.
And it's about understanding what your supervisor is looking for. Like they want someone who can handle more responsibility, someone who's already demonstrating that they're ready for the next level.
Right. It's about showing initiative, taking ownership, proving yourself.
And the book lays out this logical sequence. Important job leads to better work, leads to more rewards.
It makes sense.
And it talks about how attitudes are contagious. Like enthusiasm is a key characteristic of successful people, and enthusiasm can spread.
Positive energy is infectious.
And the good news is that we can develop enthusiasm, even if we don't feel it naturally. It's like act enthusiastic and you'll start to feel enthusiastic.
Take it till you make it again.
And there's this great example of a car salesman, Tom Staley, who created this sell yourself to yourself commercial that he would repeat to himself every day. It was all about his strength, his abilities, his potential.
It's like a personal pep talk.